Hello, my name is Austin Habish, the founder of Think Catholic, and you're listening to the Summa Theologica podcast, where we study St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae in a way simple and insightful for anyone to understand. The Summa Theologica podcast is brought to you by Think Catholic. Taking 2 questions of the Summa a day, we'll seek to summarize St. Thomas's responses, discovering the brilliance of Aquinas and his Catholic faith. This is day 29. So let's get started. We're covering today questions 55 and 56 of the Prima Pars, which is the medium of the angelic knowledge and the angel's knowledge of immaterial things. The translation that I always use in these podcasts is the Second Revised Edition, translated by the Fathers of the English Dominican Province. And so here we go. And we begin with an inquiry into the medium through which angelic knowledge is conducted. Article 1, whether the angels know all things by their substance. Only God knows all things in knowing himself. Aquinas will answer this question in relatively few words, saying, this is proper to the divine essence, which is infinite, simply and perfectly to comprise all things in itself. Therefore, God alone knows all things by his essence, but an angel cannot know all things by his essence, and his intellect must be perfected by some species in order to know things. What do we mean by species here, which is a perfect segue into our second article, whether the angels understand by species drawn from things. As we said in the last episode, when I know the tree out in the world, it is because the essence, which makes it to be a tree out there and makes me to know it in my mind, is essentially identical. The essence of trees, whether out there in the world or in my mind, is the same. It just exists in different ways. The essence of tree out there makes things actually particular trees. But in my mind, that essence exists in an abstract, not particular kind of way, informing my mind, which is what allows me to understand not just this tree in front of me, but the general notion, the species, the nature of trees, so that I can recognize a tree when I see it. It's what allows me to imagine trees or to dream about trees. It is because I get the gist or the abstract concept of what makes a tree, not just the particular object in front of my eyes. This concept or essence of things as informing the mind is what we mean by the intelligible species. It is the nature of the thing, the species of the thing, as informing the mind in order for me to understand the world outside my mind. This article asks, what is the origin of that intelligible species in the angelic mind? Is it abstracted from concrete things, which have that essence in a concrete way like we do when we understand the tree? Or do angels receive that species in the mind in some other way? Aquinas responds, angels are utterly free from bodies and subsist immaterially and in their own intelligible nature. Consequently, they attain their intelligible perfection through an intelligible outpouring, whereby they receive from God the species of things known, together with their intellectual nature. Angels receive the intellectual species, the understanding of the nature of trees or human beings or hydrogen atoms by the divine infusion. They do not abstract them from visible concrete things because they have no body to sense with or to imagine particular sensed things, which is how we abstract and understand the essence of things. In short, angels, by lacking bodies, do not sense particular things from which they can abstract the general nature of those things. They must receive their knowledge directly from God. Article 3, whether the higher angels understand by more universal species than the lower angels. Now, I think personally this is kind of a cool question. Here we are asking if the perfection of knowledge consists in its universality. Phrased another way, is the smarter angel the one who knows more, but with less, or who knows more through a simpler, more universally applicable concept? And the answer is yes. Think about God, who knows everything possible or actual by knowing one entirely simple idea, himself, his essence. And as things move down the chain on intellectual perfection, their knowledge becomes less and less simple and less universally encompassing. Here are Aquinas' words. The higher the angel is, by so much the fewer species will he be able to apprehend the whole mass of intelligible objects. Therefore, these forms must be more universal, each one of them, as it were, extending to more things. An example of this can in some measure be observed in ourselves. For some people, there are who cannot grasp an intelligible truth unless it be explained to them in every part and detail. This comes of their weakness of intellect, while there are others of stronger intellect who can grasp many things from few. All of that was Aquinas' words. Now my words. Imagine what a brilliant mind like St. Thomas Aquinas understood in understanding just one truth. For example, that God exists. Think of how many other truths, a whole universe of truths, he would have grasped or seen in knowing that one truth, seeing through that one truth. But for us regular people, we do have to be shown piece by piece each individual consequence of that truth, every other truth which flows inevitably from it. Yet for angels, or for the angelic doctor, a term the Church has given to St. Thomas Aquinas, many truths are simply seen or intuited in knowing that one truth. We move on to question 56, the angel's knowledge of immaterial things. Article 1, whether an angel knows himself, because the angel himself is immaterial. Let us return to how we know things. We take particular things we see with our eyes, then we see them in the mind with our imagination, and then we pull the general, immaterial, abstract essence from that image. We see trees with our eyes, we imagine them in the mind, and then we abstract the idea of tree from that image. This essence or form nature of tree then informs the mind. That's how we know what a tree is. Now, the intellect of the angel is naturally and always united to itself, its being, which is itself an immaterial nature. Angels are entirely immaterial. That means the mind of the angel is always united to its own immaterial form, its own species as an angel. So its form, its species, is always informing its mind because they are always united in the one angel. Now that's simple to say, but it may be worth listening to a couple times and taking some time to chew on. And Aquinas' words, so therefore, if in the order of intelligible beings there be any subsisting intelligible form, it will understand itself. And since an angel is immaterial, he is a subsisting form, and consequently he is actually intelligible. Hence it follows that he understands himself by his form, which is his substance. Hopefully between my explanation of those words and the excerpt itself, this article, whether an angel knows himself, will be clear. Article 2, whether one angel knows another. The answer is yes, and the how is God, as Aquinas writes. God impressed upon the angelic mind the images of the things which he produced in their own natural being. Now in the Word of God, from eternity there existed the forms of all spiritual creatures. So in every one of these spiritual creatures, the form of all things, both corporal and spiritual, were impressed by the Word of God. In other words, God, in making all things through his Word, through the Word of God, then impresses this knowledge of creatures into the mind of angels. All things pre-exist in the mind of God, therefore he can share that knowledge or pour that knowledge into angels. We could say more on how these forms differ from the angel's knowledge of itself, but I will refer one to the text if they would like to dig deeper into this article. Article 3, and our last article of this question, whether an angel knows God by his own natural principles. Aquinas writes, the angels are mightier in knowledge than men, yet men can know God through their natural principles. According to Romans 1:19, what is known of God is manifest to them, therefore much more so can the angels. Aquinas says here there are three ways one can know a thing. The first, one knows it because the thing itself is united to the mind. This is how angels know themselves, or God knows himself. The second, one knows the thing because a likeness of it is in the mind. Remember, that's how we know the tree. We abstract a likeness or a species from our experience of trees, which then informs the mind. Third, one knows a thing like we know a painter by staring at one of his paintings, through the knowledge derived not from the thing known, but through something else, in which it is made to appear, is what Aquinas says. Option A is how God knows God, as we have said. Option C is how we know God, staring at its effects. Option B is how angels know God, which is beautifully articulated by Aquinas. So I will simply quote his words. He says, "The angel knows God and is likened to that knowledge whereby a thing is seen through the species abstracted from it. For since God's image is impressed on the very nature of the angel in his essence, the angel knows God inasmuch as he is the image of God. The angelic nature is itself a kind of mirror representing the divine image. The angel, as we have said before, immediately knows itself. And immediately knowing itself, it sees that it is a particular being, not being itself. It has some degree of goodness, but is not boundless goodness. It has a kind of beauty, but is not he who is beauty. In seeing itself, the angel is led naturally to think about God." And that does it for questions 55 and 56 of the Prima Pars, which is the medium of the angelic knowledge and the angel's knowledge of immaterial things. My name is Austin Habish with Think Catholic, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.